If you asked a random person who the strongest Pokemon ever was, the most common answer would probably be Mewtwo. This Pokemon's very identity is ultimate power. It is by far the strongest thing in the game in Generation 1 and is an elite Pokemon in most early gens. It just has the status as the broken Pokemon. But what if I told you that in the modern day, Mewtwo is actually just average? It's only okay. This is the B- tier for Gen 8 Ubers, a 6v6 singles format where you're allowed to use legendaries. Mewtwo being in B- sounds wrong to begin with, but here it is sandwiched in between the random bug types Galvantula and Shuckle. Now just to be clear, this is not ordered by viability, it's alphabetical, but honestly, I'd say Blissey is a better Pokemon in Gen 8 Ubers than Mewtwo is. Which is an insane sentence, but I think it's true. How could such a powerful and dominant legendary fall so far from grace, and how many other legendary Pokemon that were once great have aged like milk? When you look at Mewtwo's dominance in early generations, it's easy to forgive people who might assume Mewtwo is still broken. In Gen 1 especially, Mewtwo was in its own tier, basically. These stats are just amazing even among other legendaries. 130 base speed is faster than most of them. 154 special attack is crazy. This thing hits like a truck, and I mean that sincerely. I would not compare a Pokemon to a truck unless I meant it, okay? It's not something I say lightly. And considering it's so fast and so threatening, it's also pretty bulky with a good HP and solid defenses, all things considered. Mewtwo's move pool is also vast, with every special attack you could want, Calm Mind and Nasty Plot as boosting moves. Even good utility options like Taunt and Will-O-Wisp. So what the hell happened to Mewtwo and its untouchable status? Well, a few things happened. The biggest thorn in Mewtwo's side for its modern viability is absolutely its typing. Psychic was once on top of the world, the best type in the game in Gen 1, and pretty solid in Gens 2, 3, and 4. But over time, it's just gotten worse and worse. The rise of popular attacks that threaten Psychic types are a big problem. One of the most prominent ones is U-Turn, a universal move in competitive that just attacks the enemy that allows you to switch out. It's incredible for pivoting and momentum and gaining information. And the fact that this move is bug type is just a nerf to all Psychic types, pretty much. This move isn't even used for its bug typing, it's used just for the pivoting effect. Making Psychic type works is a side effect of this move existing. Then of course there was Gen 6's buffed knockoff, which quickly became the most prominent physical attack in the game. A powerful move that hits you incredibly hard with dark type damage and removes an item. This turned Dark into one of the strongest offensive types in the game. It was a blanket nerf to all Psychic types. And in Gen 8, Psychic types indirectly suffered from the rise of Ghost types due to the removal of Pursuit. The move Pursuit used to be a way to trap Ghost types. It was a Dark type attack that deals more damage and hits Pokemon as they are switching out, so you could trap Ghost types with this. But when this was removed, Ghost types indirectly got buffed, and therefore Psychic types got nerfed because they're weak to Ghost. So all of these trends have been terrible for Psychic types. And the typing doesn't really have any useful resistances in Ubers, and as moves have generally gotten more powerful over time, Mewtwo feels like a defensive liability if you're using it on your team. It doesn't switch in against anything very well. It's actually under fire from common super effective moves, but even in terms of resistances, Mewtwo only resists 2 types, Psychic and Fighting, which aren't that useful. You're going to be taking neutral damage from most attacks, and neutral attacks have just gotten more powerful. It felt like in earlier generations, Mewtwo could not only be a powerful offensive threat, but also switch in pretty cleanly against most things. It had that feeling of being really bulky too. But that feeling has gone away as Psychic has just gotten so much worse as a defensive typing, with every single generation introducing new things to punish Psychic typing. Mewtwo is still paying karmic debt for the harm it caused in Generation 1, as by far the most broken Pokemon in that game. They have overcompensated by absolutely punching down on the Psychic type with every single new generation that comes out, perhaps to the point where it's a bit overkill. But in modern days, Psychic, a lot of people think it's actually the worst type in the game. Even worse than Bug and Ice, which at least have a bit more merit. I mean, Bug is garbage offensively and defensively, but at least you have Stab on good moves like U-Turn and First Impression. Bug types tend to have access to Sticky Web. Ice types are at least a very strong offensive type. Psychic is kind of just garbage defensively and offensively. So yeah, Psychic typing has really declined, but the other bad thing about Mewtwo is its choices for abilities. Mewtwo has access to the ability Pressure, which causes the opponent to use twice as much PP against you with moves. This is pretty useless on a Pokemon like Mewtwo. This is a fast offensive Pokemon. Pressure only really gets value on defensive Pokemon, and the utility of this ability on Mewtwo is limited. It's basically like having no ability at all. The other option is Unnerve, which prevents the opposing Pokemon from eating berries. This just isn't very useful in any Ubers format. You might occasionally see some berries. They can be good, but it's really not going to have much of an impact. This is not Pokemon Champions where every single Pokemon is carrying a berry. This is Gen 9 Ubers where every single Pokemon is wearing the funny boots. Very different environment, where unnerving the enemy and frightening them to the point where they cannot eat berries is not that useful. But despite all of that, Mewtwo always still had its great speed that set it apart. It was a great combination of threatening and fast. A lot of legendaries are actually pretty slow. Mewtwo was one of the rare fast ones, but that has begun to change recently, and we're now seeing more Ubers level threats faster and more desirable and preferable than Mewtwo. One of the big ones is Eternatus from Gen 8. Eternatus also has a base 130 speed, but the Poison Dragon typing is way better than Mewtwo's Mono Psychic typing and has far more defensive merit. Eternatus is also bulkier with an incredible 140 base HP and slightly higher defenses of 95 each. Eternatus is a way more desirable and similar Pokemon to Mewtwo. There's also Fluttermane in Gen 9, who's not even a legendary, but it's better than most legendaries. Fluttermane is a past paradox form of Misdreavus, and this Pokemon is outstanding. This guy is even faster than Mewtwo and Eternatus at 135 base speed. And in fact, it outruns and directly threatens Mewtwo with a super effective Shadow Ball, for goodness sake. Although Fluttermane's other stats are a bit worse than Mewtwo's, generally, the fact that it's that little bit faster and also has a far better typing offensively and defensively puts it above Mewtwo on the viability rankings. It also has the ability Photosynthesis, which actually does something. This grants a boost to your highest stat if Sun is up, and Sun is often up because of Koraidon. So Fluttermane is outclassing Mewtwo, which seems wrong. This is a weird Misdreavus with a bit more hair, and it's more powerful than literal Mewtwo. It doesn't seem right, but it is correct. This is the truth. So there is a rise of Pokemon that are similar to Mewtwo, but feel stronger and more useful. There's also a rise in Pokemon that match up positively against Mewtwo. Even though King Gambit is not a legendary, and it's not even Ubers ranked, it's very popular in Gen 9 Ubers, ranked in the A- tier above most legendaries in the game. And King Gambit is incredibly adversarial to Mewtwo. It is immune to its psychic damage and threatens it lethally with Sucker Punch. Lunala is in the game, and Lunala is a Ghost-type legendary that can survive hits from Mewtwo thanks to its Shadow Shield ability and then strike back. Mewtwo is also threatened by other legendaries faster than it, especially the physical attackers, like Zacian Crown, who is way faster than Mewtwo and can dish out some serious damage against it, and Koraidon, who is the top Pokemon in the whole format, also faster than Mewtwo. So all of the things that used to make Mewtwo so great, its powerful combination of defense and offense, its great move pool, its excellent speed tier, all of this is feeling just completely diminished in modern day, as its typing feels worse, its defensive profile is just an active detriment almost. Other things outrun it and threaten it pretty commonly, and it's just rough out there for Mewtwo. I mentioned earlier that Mewtwo was ranked B- in Gen 8, and it's also ranked B- in Gen 9, which, to be fair, is not completely terrible. A B- Pokemon is at least still usable in Ubers. It's not totally garbage, but considering how excellent Mewtwo once was, it is a pretty significant drop off, for sure. There are certainly legendaries that have aged worse than Mewtwo. And one of the prime examples of that, I would say, is Lugia. I would think casual gamers expect Lugia to be pretty strong. It's on the box of Pokemon Silver. Lugia and Ho-Oh are portrayed as equals. But these are not equals. Ho-Oh is an absolute all-time GOAT of legendary Pokemon, still incredibly strong to this day, while Lugia is not even viable in Ubers. Lugia is in the D rank, and the description of the D rank here says that these Pokemon are only Ubers by tiering and possess no real metagame niche. Pokemon such as Orthworm, Skeledirge, and Rabombi are ranked significantly higher than Lugia and are considered more worthwhile in the Gen 9 Ubers metagame. Now, how does that make any sense? Lugia was designed as a defensive legendary. It is a psychic flying type with some of the greatest defensive stats in the game. 130 physical defense and 154 special defense. Lugia sets itself apart from other walls by also being kind of fast with 110 base speed, actually above average for most legendaries. And in early generations, Lugia was functional in this role. In Gen 2 Ubers, its debut, this is a great Pokemon. Lugia is also quite strong in Gen 3 Ubers. Simple defensive sets with Toxic and Recover are effective. It has Whirlwind to phase enemy Pokemon out. But you can also run Choice Band Lugia, which I think is the coolest Lugia set in history. Even though Lugia only has 90 base attack, the powerful Stab Aeroblast with 100 base power, and other strong physical options like Shadow Ball and Earthquake make Choice Band Lugia a genuinely frightening threat. And Lugia's high speed also works in its favor here. But Gen 4 is where cracks started to form in Lugia's dream. This Pokemon was severely punished by the new addition of Stealth Rock. Stealth Rock is an entry hazard that deals damage to Pokemon based on their weakness to rock. Lugia, being a flying type, takes 25% from Stealth Rock, which is a bit of a disaster as Stealth Rock is a ubiquitous move in competitive singles, one of the strongest. So Lugia fell all the way down to B tier in Gen 4 as a result of this. In Gen 5, they tried to compensate for this by giving Lugia a powerful new ability, and at least they did give it a very strong ability. Unlike Mewtwo, who got Unnerve, useless, Lugia got Multiscale. Multiscale is very good. Multiscale halves incoming damage if your Pokemon is at full HP. An incredibly strong defensive ability that allows Lugia to abuse its defenses to the absolute max in some cases. But there is still the problem of Stealth Rock, which inconveniently will deal damage to Lugia as it switches in, removing its Multiscale defensive buff. This buff was not enough to shift Lugia's viability position, and it remains B tier in Gen 5 as well. And Lugia, over the years, has suffered from many of the same problems that Mewtwo did, with its psychic typing starting to become more of a drawback with the rise of knockoff and ghost types, and powerful legendaries that are dark and ghost type, like Yveltal, Marshadow in Gen 7, Lunala. Lunala is a particularly bad one because its signature move Moongeist Beam just completely ignores Multiscale. In Gen 8, Lugia did benefit from the new addition of heavy-duty boots, allowing it to ignore Stealth Rock and maintain Multiscale easier. But at that point, I think it was a bit too late. Lugia does have excellent defensive stats, but it's hard to leverage them for anything useful. The drawback of your typing is significant, and Lugia is often outclassed by non-legendary Pokemon with stronger neutral typings like Blissey, Ferrothorn, etc. As a defensive Pokemon, Lugia doesn't feel that great. Part of that is because of the typing, but also it doesn't really do anything when it switches in. The best it can do is Whirlwind you out or poison you with Toxic. It's not really threatening itself anymore, the power level's too high. Its 90 base attack and special attack are not cutting it anymore. So Lugia, when it switches in, if it can survive, doesn't even achieve much. And it's made even worse in Gen 9 when they even cut Toxic from Lugia's moveset. Toxic was cut from a lot of movesets, and Lugia perhaps suffered more than most. It really needed Toxic to do something with its defensive switch-ins and actually apply a bit of pressure to the enemy. Now it has to run miscellaneous attacks, which are just not going to achieve much. Compared to defensive Arceus forms, which have, Stealth Rock, powerful Stab Judgment, they can set up, they can Will-O-Wisp. What does Lugia offer? Not very much. It's not even good at walling the common Pokemon, and when it does, it fails to get any progress or move forward with a game plan that makes any sense. So Lugia is considered unviable in modern Ubers, unfortunately. Now it wishes for the B rank. At least the B rank meant it had a seat at the table, could be sometimes used in contexts where its defense was appreciated, but now, even on a full stall team or something, you're probably not even going to bother running Lugia, to be honest. It's quite a shame. The harsh reality is, to function as a defensive Pokemon in Ubers in modern day, you probably have to be a strong type like Fairy or Steel, or have a good neutral typing that allows your stats to do the heavy lifting like Blissey. You also really need strong utility, things like Stealth Rock, status moves, spikes, and without any of that, Lugia just feels outdated and bad, frankly, in Gen 9 Ubers. This is one of those Pokemon where I wonder to myself, if they unbanned this guy and allowed it in OU, would it even be that great? It's that bad in Gen 9 Ubers that it has me asking such a question. I also want to say that I think Lugia's hand wings with pronounced fingers on them that are also rectangular, are a bit weird. Those are a bit weird and I don't really get what's going on there. I'm sorry if that offends you, but I just have to speak honestly from my heart and get that off my chest. I'm sorry. Another legendary that has aged poorly is Palkia. Yet another one that's on the box of a game. And I often talk about how the Gen 4 box legendaries have not aged amazingly. And they haven't, but Palkia is particularly bad here. Palkia in Gen 9 Ubers is also in the D rank, which remember is an indication that you don't really provide anything. Whereas at least Dialga and Giratina, while they have fallen off significantly, are both in the C- rank, which suggests that they can do something sometimes. Palkia does not even have that privilege, and is the worst of that original Gen 4 legendary box trio in modern day. And this might be a bit shocking to some. Palkia seems like a very solid Pokemon. It actually has a really good typing of Dragon Water. Its stats are incredibly well rounded. And in the earlier generations of Ubers where this guy existed, it was commonly seen. It was strong. It had a great mix of bulk offensive power, strong entry points from its typing, good move pool. It was just solid. It was especially known as a pretty good check to Kyogre, since it has a ×4 water resistance. It's actually able to tank a rain-boosted water spout. And it's also neutral to ice and electric, which are the other coverage types Kyogre commonly uses. So Palkia is one of the few legendaries that can switch in on Kyogre and then threaten it with thunder, which is strong. But while Gen 4 and 5 were a nice walk in the park for Palkia, Gen 6 was an absolute disaster for this Pokemon. In Gen 6, Palkia entered a state of deep depression at the world around it. Everything went wrong for Palkia here. The introduction of the Fairy type was an absolute travesty for this Pokemon. Fairy quickly became a popular and central type. It is incredibly powerful, and Palkia could no longer spam its Dragon type attacks, as there was this strong new type that was completely immune to Dragon. What's worse is that Ubers had some incredibly powerful Fairy types to worry about. Xerneas was the big one. The mere existence of Xerneas, a terrible thorn in Palkia's side. There was also Arceus Fairy. Another disaster for Palkia was the introduction of Primal Groudon, the new #1 Pokemon in Ubers, who sets harsh, heavy sunlight on the field. And when this is active, water-type attacks have no effect whatsoever. So Palkia can't even click a water move against a Pokemon weak to water anymore. Even that is out of the question. Palkia can still wall Kyogre Primal, or at least switch in against it pretty well, but then it struggles to actually achieve much progress from there due to the existence of the Primal Dawn and all these Fairy types. Its offensive profile completely shut down by some of the most common Pokemon in the game. You'd think maybe Gen 8 would be a return to form for Palkia, with the Primals now no longer existing and going back to regular old Kyogre and Groudon. But Palkia was introduced to a new adversary in Gen 8 that kind of replaced it. We've already talked about this Pokemon before, Eternatus. Eternatus was a powerful new dragon type legendary introduced in Gen 8 that feels like it's just directly superior. Even though it's a poison dragon instead of water dragon, that typing actually has advantages over water dragon and in some ways better, especially being neutral to fairy, which is a big deal. Eternatus is faster and bulkier and just more useful overall, more consistent, more powerful. So it's difficult to justify using Palkia when Eternatus is extremely similar and is right there, outperforming Palkia in most areas. Palkia only has 100 base speed, it doesn't have much going on, its ability is still just pressure since telepathy is useless in singles, and while Eternatus has pressure too, it can use it better because of its bulk and it's just a better Pokemon in terms of stats. Gen 6, 7, and 8 were all adversarial towards Palkia, with Pokemon that are common, outclassing, or ruining its life. But Gen 9 was the true nail in the coffin for this Pokemon. Not only is Eternatus still here to outclass it, we now have multiple fast threats that completely shut down Palkia. Koraidon is the number 1 Pokemon in the game. It sets Sun on the field to nerf water, it resists water, and directly threatens Palkia. Zacian Crowned is legal in Gen 9 since it was nerfed, and the presence of Zacian Crowned is also terrible. It's completely immune to dragon moves, it outruns Palkia by a significant margin and just one-shots it with any fairy-type attack. Eternatus is still here totally outclassing Palkia in everything it might want to do. Flutter Mane threatens you as well, it's just a terrible time for Palkia. This Pokemon really feels like a relic of a bygone era. It was once solid purely on what felt like sheer power, from stats, typing, move pool, but now the power level among legendaries has risen and Palkia has been left in the dust. Now it's worth mentioning that Palkia's origin form is a little bit more viable. This requires that you hold a special orb item to turn into a horse, which is what happens in real life too if you hold a certain orb at the right time of day. And when Palkia becomes a horse, it is a bit faster with 120 speed, which serves its interests, but even Palkia's horse form is only C rank, not that impressive for an exciting new form of an old legendary, and Palkia's base form is way down in the D rank, considered pretty much unusable in Gen 9 Ubers. I think it's a shame because Palkia and Dialga are iconic legendaries in my opinion that are deserving of a bit of a buff for modern games. I hope that happens in Gen 10. But my guess is that it won't because they already did the origin forms, and those were unfortunately a bit of a missed opportunity. Now most of these Pokemon are examples where they have aged poorly over a long period of time. It takes many years, multiple game releases for these great legendaries to eventually become worse and worse. But there is a case where a Pokemon was literally godlike to the point where it was banned from Ubers, and in the very next game, just one game later, was in the D rank of Ubers, considered unviable in the tier. Perhaps the starkest game-to-game drop-off of any legendary in history, and that is base form Zacian. Zacian is more known for its crowned form, which is more popular and more powerful, but its base form has merit too. And in Gen 8, base form Zacian was also banned from being used in Ubers, which is an extraordinarily rare thing to happen. Only a select few Pokemon have ever been banned from Ubers. This Pokemon was overwhelmingly powerful in Gen 8. Its stats are outstanding. 130 base attack, 138 speed is really good. Faster than most things ever. Strong defenses too, and the fairy typing is one you can't go too wrong with. The ability Intrepid Sword was the real broken part though. On switch in, this Pokemon's attack is raised by one stage. Every single time you switch in, you just get an attack boost, like having a permanent choice band equipped without the downside. This is the ability that really made Zacian and Zacian Crowned so overpowered. And most of you probably know that Zacian was nerfed heavily in Gen 9. The developers admitted that they went a bit too far here. This was too powerful of a dog and it had to be dealt with. So Zacian and its crowned form both had decreased stats, with their attack being lowered, and also the ability to Intrepid Sword only now worked on the first turn that you switch in, once per battle, rather than being a permanent, ever-present attack boost, which was ridiculous, of course. Now that is no longer the case. However, even with this nerf, this still seems like a strong Pokemon. It still has a strong attack stat and a powerful ability. Even though the boost is temporary, it's still good. So although the Pokemon was nerfed, it does seem kind of insane that this Pokemon is now in the D rank. Why is that exactly? The biggest and most obvious reason is just that Zacian Crowned is overall a superior Pokemon. Zacian Crowned does need to hold a dedicated item to transform into the crowned form, but the stat increases and the additional steel typing as well as steel stab on the move Behemoth Blade are so strong that it's just pretty much objectively better to run Zacian Crowned rather than base form Zacian. Zacian's advantage of being able to hold an item means that it will lead more towards choice items. Powerful items that lock you into a move but enhance one of your stats. The choice band seems good on this, allowing it to dish out more immediate damage, but Zacian with a choice band is not actually that threatening in Gen 9 Ubers. The powerful stab play rough is good, but there are a lot of common fairy resistances like Ho-Oh and Skeledirge, various different steel types. Your best coverage option here is Close Combat, a powerful fighting type attack that can at least threaten steel types, but there is a problem of locking into something disadvantageous and just being easy to punish. Zacian requires more prediction, where Zacian Crowned doesn't, and Zacian Crowned has an attack increase plus the freedom to switch moves. Zacian also really feels the lack of its steel typing. That bonus steel typing is a pretty significant boost. Gives you so many more entry points, offers an immunity to poison, plenty of resistances. It's overall an improvement that makes Zacian Crown so much more effective. Without that, Zacian feels a bit bare bones. And you also can't help but feel that a simple Koraidon is superior to Zacian. Koraidon has the ability to pivot with U-turn, it sets sand on the field, and is a similar fast offensive threat. Koraidon receives an attack boost in the sun it itself creates. It's almost like the new Zacian with a permanent attack increase, whereas Zacian's attack increase is now temporary and is not as easy to take advantage of. It's easy to force out the initial Zacian attack, punish them for locking into something, and then for the rest of the game Zacian is just not that great, not that effective. I mean, even physical wall breakers like Qian Pao are ranked higher than Zacian. Qian Pao at least has strong offensive typing and access to priority moves. Zacian's toolkit feels incredibly weak. It's outclassed by its own alternate form and many different other alternative physical attackers in the format. It's just not worth running. It's a stark drop-off, but it's also one that makes perfect sense when you break it down, I think. In its post-nerf state, Zacian has just not maintained very much of its peak power. The dog days of summer are over, Zacian. You have to move on. Your 15 minutes of fame are up, and now you have to reckon with who you are once the dust has settled. You must look in the mirror and really evaluate what you see, Zacian. And finally, I'd like to end the video with some good news, and that is the fact that Shaman Sky has aged terribly and is pretty much never seen anymore in Ubers. This is fantastic news because I hate Shaman Sky, and I would like for them to just put him into an incinerator, never to be seen again, or something like that. I think it's an insult to me and everybody else that he's still in the game when you've cut Furfrau from the game. Furfrau never did anything wrong, it never did anything at all, really. But it never did anything wrong, whereas Shaman Sky has done many things wrong in it. You keep him in the game and you cut Furfrau. I just don't think it's very morally consistent from the developers, but regardless, we can at least be thankful that Shaman Sky is not doing much in Generation 9. This is a Pokemon that might seem a bit weak for a legendary when you look at it. It's an Ubers ranked Pokemon with kind of underwhelming stats as opposed to its peers. It has 120 special attack, which is good, but not amazing. 127 speed is fast, but its bulk and firepower are not that impressive for a legendary, you must admit. But Shaman Sky has an absolutely devious combo that it takes advantage of. With the ability Serene Grace, secondary effect chances on moves are doubled. And Shaman Sky has access to the stab flying type special attack Air Slash, which has a 30% chance to flinch, buffed to a 60% chance by Serene Grace. So Shaman Sky with a choice scarf can, in some scenarios, just spam Air Slash, flinching almost every single time, and just cheese you to death by 1,000 cuts. It also deals pretty good damage, and unlike Jirachi, who utilizes Iron Head for the same purposes, Air Slash is a special attack, so you're not worried about contact effects punishing you. Flame Body or Rocky Helmet or Iron Barbs or Rough Skin, all these things that punish Iron Head spam aren't as much of a problem. Air Slash is actually a pretty spammable move. Flying is a strong offensive type, and Shaman Sky is a cut above the comparable Pokemon Togekiss with superior offensive stats, especially its speed. Beyond this, Shaman Sky has a powerful stab Seed Flare with an 80% chance to lower the target's special defense by 2. That's also quite spammable, actually. That's its other good option. But the main appeal to this guy is the ability to cheese games with flinch. And you actually have pretty good odds sometimes to just prevent the enemy from acting at all and clean up a game with this thing. Very frustrating to face. In some scenarios you just can't really do anything except hope that it doesn't flinch you. And Shaman Sky was never top tier or anything, but it was in the B rank of Gen 4 and 5 Ubers, which is far too high for a devious Pokemon like this one. You would see this fairly often, and it was pretty good. But now in Gen 9, Shaman Sky is D rank on the Gen 9 viability rankings. Considered unviable. I don't think I've ever actually seen one, because it's so terrible now that it's not even really worth it. Shaman Sky has suffered from a generally rising power level and stronger switch-ins to its air slash spam. Necrozma Duskmane is probably the biggest thorn in this guy's side. Air Slash does almost no damage to this. It has the ability to heal off the damage. The odds are pretty low to flinch every single time when your damage output is so low, and Necrozma Duskmane also threatens Shaman Sky with significant damage itself. Shaman Sky can carry Earth Power as coverage to hit Steel-type switch-ins and other things, but even Earth Power doesn't do very much to Necrozma Duskmane because of its Prism Armor ability. Seed Flare will of course do almost nothing, so that's terrible news for Shaman Sky. There's also Zacian Crowned in the format, resisting Air Slash and threatening to one-hit you with Behemoth Blade. So you have to hit probably 10 flinches, which is unlikely. Air Slash also has a 5% miss chance. The odds are just not in your favor to power through the Zacian Crowned. King Gambit is also a disaster for Shaman Sky. King Gambit is the easiest sucker punch ever against a Pokemon that is clearly going to be locked into a move, because without Choice Scarf, it's not powerful enough to achieve much. So you resist the Air Slash, and you just sidestep the flinch chance completely by smacking them. Shaman Sky has always suffered from its poor bulk and its vulnerability to Stealth Rock, especially because you can't really afford to run heavy-duty boots on this. It's not really worth it. The Choice Scarf is so important to maximize the chances for Air Slash to bail you out. Without it, you might as well just run another Pokemon, to be honest. So Shaman Sky, in most games, if you're going to bring it to Gen 9 Ubers, will probably just Air Slash, not do enough damage, eventually fail to get a flinch, and then die. Or get chipped down over time by Stealth Rock and random residual damage. In prior generations, the power level was a bit lower. Speed benchmarks were also a bit lower, so Choice Scarf Shaman Sky could outrun most things, deal enough damage with Air Slash as well, to perhaps power through things and actually function as a late game cleaner. But in Gen 9, there's just too many roadblocks for it. The poor bulk is catching up to it, and it's just way harder to achieve its game plan. Another factor that I must mention is the social aspect going on here, which a lot of YouTubers would not talk about, but Shaman Sky has sort of been socially ostracized in Gen 9. A lot of Pokemon think it was rude of Shaman Sky to even show up in Gen 9 after what he did in prior gens. At least take a gen off to think about and reflect on your own actions and to grow as a person, but Shaman Sky decided to show up, and it's actually considered very rude to put Shaman Sky on your team as a result. The other Pokemon do not like him. He's sort of got an annoying grin. He's sort of annoying, and they don't want him around. They just don't want him around. So that's an absolute factor that has affected Shaman Sky's social standing, which does affect usage. Thanks for watching, folks. Like the video if you enjoyed it. Subscribe if you would like to see more. And as a reward for watching to the end, I hereby bless you with good fortune. You've received a Jimothy blessing. Thank you very much.